Hey, what's up YouTube? It's Muse. Today we're going to have a guide on making silver. And we're going to go over all the different things and different ways to maximize your silver and how to get the max silver per game, which a lot of people I don't think realize. There was something that happened the other day. I was in a stream. It was Hive stream. Mr. Hivehound has, awesome content if you ever want to go check him out. Probably already know. Anyway, I was in his stream and he was with Prince Blip, and there was a question I asked pertaining to the economy and specifically in regards to damage. And the answer kind of surprised me a little. It was something I didn't know and I learned, which really impacts my overall view of how to make XP and silver in this game. So what I learned was everything that gets you XP and silver, and we're going to have a list we're going to talk about, but everything that gets you XP and silver has diminishing returns. So if we use damage for an example, your first 50,000 damage is worth the most XP and the most silver. And this is, I don't know what the actual numbers are, but this is just a kind of a rough idea of what happens. So we're just going to say your first 50,000 is worth the most XP and silver. Your next 50,000 is slightly reduced from that. The next 50,000 after that, so that, when you get to, the 100,000 point, so 100,000, 150 is going to be reduced even more than the first two, and so on, and so on, and so on. So every time it's basically like a soft cap, to where you're not going to get the returns. So, when you have a 300,000 damage game, that's not necessarily a guarantee towards silver and XP. You need to be doing a combination of things. And again, we have a list we're going to talk about of what actually gets you silver, what gets you XP, but we're primarily focused on the silver at this point. So that's what we're going to get into. First thing I want to talk about is the tier. What tier to play. So Tier 5 to Tier 7 is going to be the sweet spot. Between Tier 7 and Tier 8, if you have a big game at Tier 7 and you have a big game at Tier 8, you're going to make almost nothing at Tier 8 compared to Tier 7. Tier 7 is like the primo spot for big games. Tier 5 is... there's a very low service cost. So the service costs on the sweet spot tiers, let's go over that real quick. Service cost on tier 5s is 28,750. The service cost on a tier 6 is 101,250, and the service cost on a tier 7 is 160,000. So the moment you go into a battle, you already owe that amount, and you have to make that amount back before you can begin to make profit. When you go up to Tier 8 and you go to Legend, Tier 8 is very hard to turn a profit, and Legend, unless you have an absolutely just massive, massive, massive game, you're probably not going to turn a profit. Tier 7, or Legendary tier, is usually a loss of silver. And then down below that, Tier 4 all the way down to Tier 1, there's just so little payout that even though they have the lower service cost, you're not going to make the kind of money you can between 5 and 7. So that is the sweet spot, Tier 5 to Tier 7. So 6 is a good option if you want to kind of play casual. You don't need to have the biggest games in the world to make decent money. 7, if you're an experienced player, a vet player, that's probably where you're going to want to hang out. That's where you're going to get the biggest money for a big game. That's going to get you the most silver. So that's discussing the tiers. I personally prefer Tier 7. That's where I tend to make the most money, so that's where I hang out, is Tier 7 mostly. So now we're going to talk about what we do in a battle and how to get silver and XP, but we're talking silver. So there's a number of things I'm going to go over here, and again, each one of these things has diminishing returns. So the first, whatever you do of it, is going to be the max value for it, and after that it's going to get reduced every time you repeat that. So if it's 10, by the time you get to, you've done it 100 times, you're going to get almost nothing for it. So the way to maximize your silver and maximize your XP is to do a little bit of all these things during a battle, and you should be, each battle you play, trying to work as much of this in as possible. And that's the way to maximize your silver. Going out having a huge damage game is great, but if you don't do the other things, you're not going to see a whole lot of silver and XP from it. How many, I don't know how many times some of you had some big damage games, but, maybe you were playing a sniper battleship and you didn't get all these other things ticked off, and you just didn't get the silver XP you thought you should. Well, this is why. There's diminishing returns, so all that damage, eventually you're getting almost nothing back for doing it. And really what you want to do is have a very balanced game. And we'll talk about that more when we talk about what classes are good. So we're going to go over the list now. And the first thing on the list is the capture and protection of control points and bases. So taking caps, getting defend ribbons, that is going to tick off the first box. The next thing we have is damage inflicted on enemy ships. So doing damage, but again, there's diminishing returns. So, you can only do it so much. Just like defend ribbons. Your first, 5 or 10 defend ribbons are worth the most, and then after that, each time you repeat that cycle, it diminishes, and the returns are not what they were on that first 5 or 10, or your first 50,000 damage, or any of these things we talk about. So the next one's going to be destruction of enemy ships, getting kills. That goes with damage. Usually when you're doing damage, you're going to end up getting kills too. But again, there's diminishing returns, so you only need to get 1 or 2 kills. That ticks off that box for you. Next, we're going to have detecting enemy ships, ship torpedoes, and squadrons. So spotting red ships, spotting torpedoes coming into your team, or spotting planes is going to get you silver and XP. Again, there's diminishing returns, so you don't need to, go out and get every single spot there is. You get a couple spots, you're good to go. Damage on a detected player, aka spotting damage. So when you spot somebody, if your team fires at them and does damage to them, you're going to get silver and XP for that. Then we have getting potential damage. This can come in 2 forms. This can come in the shell or the torpedo hit you, and you bounced it, or you didn't take damage from it, the full damage. Whatever you didn't take, you're going to get as potential damage. The other way is to completely dodge. If you dodge a shell, you dodge a torpedo, you avoided the full damage of it, so you're going to get rewarded for that. And again, diminishing returns, so you don't need to be, going out getting yourself killed to get potential damage in. But, being in the fight is going to help that. Just being in the fight, if you have people firing at you, if you have torps coming in where you're at, you're in the mix of things, you're going to end up getting it. So again, the best way to get silver and XP is to check off all these boxes. So that's going to lead us into the ship classes. And I tried to find information on this. There wasn't a lot of information, so I'm just going to go off my experience and take my best guess. So this is pretty much mostly my opinion. The ship classes I tend to think that favors grinding silver and XP the most are going to be DD's number 1, cruisers number 2, battleships number 3, and CVs are a very dead last for a number of reasons. Can they go out and have a good game and get silver and XP? Yes, they can. Don't get me wrong, but they're kind of at a handicap for checking off all the things on that list. So the reason I say DD is number 1, usually when you look at a game where your team performed well, Usually at the top of the team, there's going to be a DD. And they're going to have the highest XP. They probably got the most silver. And the reason for that is DDs, just by the nature of what they need to do during a game and what a good DD player is going to end up doing, end up checking off a lot of those boxes. They just get a very wide, varied range of things they're doing during a battle. You know, they're doing the capping, they're doing, you know, damage, they're detecting things and spotting, they're getting the spotting damage, and usually, occasionally, they're getting shot at or torped, so they're avoiding potential damage. So they check off all the different boxes during a battle, and that's why DDs tend to end up very top of the team usually. Then you get cruisers, and cruisers are kind of the same thing, just the playstyle tends to lead. I mean, you know, don't get me wrong, there's the people that are just going to sit in the back and try to farm damage with, you know, HE spam. But they're not going to have that big silver game or big XP game because they're not checking off all the boxes. And again, there's diminishing returns, so damage is only going to get you so far. But a lot of cruiser players, you know, tend to play their cruisers the way cruisers should be playing, and they end up doing a lot of different things during the course of a fight, kind of like a DD. They're versatile, they're multi-rolled, so they can go out and just check off all these different boxes. BBs, they can be a little iffy. I mean, if you're playing like a sniper BB, you're really kind of limited on, you know, the silver and XP you can make just because you're way back, so far back out of the fight that some of those boxes might be a little hard to check off. You could get lucky, you know, like instead of getting caps, you get your defense. You know, somebody tries to take a cap and they get spotted doing it, and you're able to get defend ribbons. So it is possible to have a big game as a sniper BB, but the best BB games as far as silver and XP go on a general basis are going to be brawlers. Brawlers are up in the mix, they're up in the cap, so they have a lot easier time just checking off all those boxes and having a very even balanced game, and that is what leads to big XP and big silver, is doing as much as possible on that checklist. And then CVs, that they're, you know, usually they're not up in the fight, they're not capping things. Again, they may get lucky and get some defense or something, so it is possible to have a big game XP and silver-wise in a CV, but it's just not ideal. You're far better going with a DD or cruiser, in my opinion. That's the best way to go out and make silver. Or a brawler BB. Brawler BBs are very good at making silver. And so the last thing I want to talk about is the service cost. One thing people don't realize about the service cost, it's not going to be a huge thing. You're talking about maybe 5 to 10% more service cost is your ammunition. And the more ammunition you fire, the more that service cost goes up. So if you're one of those players like shooting at teammates or just, you know, spamming at the map across nothing, you know, with your HE, you're raising your service costs, and it's not by much. It's nothing that's really going to break the bank, but just be aware of that if you're grinding silver. Anyway, I appreciate YouTube. Thank you, and good hunting and fair seas, Captain. Catch you later. Bye.